We're bringing you boots on the ground insight from the ranchers, conservationists, and partners who are helping to preserve the best of the Golden State for generations to come. Join the California Rangeland Trust for inspiring stories of resilience, innovation, and hope as we get tuned into the land.
Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to Season 5 of Tune Into the Land. I'm your host, Michael Delbar, the CEO of the California Rangeland Trust. As we begin another season, I want to take a moment to thank our listeners, those of you who've been with us from the beginning, and those who may be joining us for the first time. Over the past 5 seasons, this podcast has been about sharing the voices, stories, and perspectives of people who are deeply connected to California's working lands. We're grateful you've taken this journey with us, and we're excited to continue the conversation. This year feels especially meaningful as we kick off a new season. The United Nations has recognized this as the Year of the Woman Farmer, acknowledging the essential and often under-recognized roles women play in agriculture. Women in this industry don't fit into a single box. There are producers, land stewards, decision makers, caregivers, advocates, and leaders, and often all at the same time. For our first episode of Season 5, we wanted to begin by highlighting one of those perspectives. Today's conversation centers on a woman whose experience spans nearly every corner of agriculture and land stewardship. She is a working rancher in Mendocino and Lake counties, a former county executive director for the USDA Farm Service Agency, a member of the California State Board of Forestry and Fire Protection, and president of the Mendocino County Cattlemen's Association. Oh, and also the president of her local school board, and of course, a mentor to many. Her career has been shaped by service, leadership, and a deep commitment to land and community. And she happens to be my wife and the person who keeps our family grounded and moving forward. And while I admit to being a little biased, it's a perspective I'm proud to share. Together, Katie and I will talk about the many roles she has held throughout her career and how her experiences as a rancher has shaped the way she approaches leadership at both the state, agency, and local levels. We also spend time discussing what it means to be a woman in ranching today, the challenges and opportunities that come with that, and what it looks like to raise and support the next generation of agriculturalists. With that, I'm pleased to bring you my conversation with my better half, Katie Delbar. And with that, it's my pleasure to welcome our first guest of Season 5 to Tune Into the Land, which happens to be my wife, Katie Delbar. Welcome.
Welcome.
So we're here in Potter Valley at the Eddy Ranch, where we are branding cattle this weekend. And so we're taking a little bit of a break from that activity to chat about the International Year of the Woman Farmer. And Katie, we're going to talk about your role in history in ranching, as well as your role on the Board of Forestry and through USDA. So can you share with us more about your background in history?
Okay. I was born and raised in Potter Valley. My family I'm a 5th generation rancher in Potter Valley. Our kids are 6th, and our granddaughter Hattie is 7th. We settled in Potter Valley in 1859 and started acquiring different parcels of land and grew the ranch. And over the years, that shrunk and grew, depending on the family that was the head of the family at that time. But
some generational changes.
Generational changes definitely happened throughout the years. But we've always been involved in a little bit of both farming and ranching. We've had pears and corn and hay crops, and then cattle and sheep. We no longer have pears anymore, but we still have cattle, sheep, and some timber as well.
So you spent 33 years in the Farm Service Agency under USDA, providing services and support, disaster support and program support to farmers and ranchers across the North Coast. Now you've stepped away from that. You've retired and able to devote full time to being a rancher. Tell us a little bit about what that's like. What's your day-to-day life like now that you've got your career behind you and now you can focus entirely on the ranch?
Well, it gives me an opportunity to not try to shove everything into 2 days on a weekend. So I'm able to get more done, but maybe at a pace that's more reasonable. I remember we would, on weekends when both of us worked, I would plan 20 things in one day and think that we could get all of those things done with the kids and with my brother and with the rest of the family. Like, what can we get done in a day? I have all of these things planned, and I'd be so upset because by the end of the day, maybe we've only got 2 of them, or maybe all those plans went out the door like it does in ranching. Like, you always wake up with an idea of what you're going to get done, and then all of a sudden you get a call, there's cows out somewhere else.
That only happens when we traveled somewhere.
That's true.
Get off the plane and the first call is, cows out.
Yeah, that happens a lot when we're gone. But that's why I never go anywhere. But back, I mean, that's changed. So I would say that part of it is being retired gives me an opportunity to set some more goals, have some more time, and how do you meet those instead of trying to cram everything into 2 days and evenings. So I feel like it's balanced. You're still going to have those with ranching. Nothing is ever going to be the same every day, but you're still, by being not trying to also do the ranching and work 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week and be traveling and then try to get it done when you have the extra time or in the evenings. It gives me more opportunity to actually see things through, get things done, and slow down a little bit and enjoy it.
As you traveled a lot with your job, you ran 2 offices, 2.5, 3 hours apart. So that's a lot of travel, and took you away from the ranch for days on end.
Absolutely. Away from the ranch and away from you and away from my kids. But yes, I did Humboldt and Del Norte County and Lake and Mendocino County, and then assisted different times with Sonoma, Marin, and other counties throughout the state.
How do you feel your hands-on ranching experience growing up in this business, growing up raising cattle, sheep, hay, other crops, all the horses, everything? How do you think that helped you be so successful in your job as the county executive director for FSA?
If you go into a room with ranchers and you're not a rancher, they know it. If you didn't have the roots, you didn't grow up in it, it just takes them long. I'm not saying they won't trust you eventually, but it takes more time. When you go into a room or out in the field, or you jump in a truck with them and you can get out and cut hay bales and do the things that you do on your own property, because you're not going to sit and let somebody else do the work without you helping. You weren't raised that way. They open up more to you. They share what's going on. And so I think that really growing up and having that understanding, and also understanding their struggles. But on top of that, just learning from everybody that I met on the North Coast and throughout the state and in other states, I learned a lot from them that I could bring back and use at home. So if I went out to work with different people, I really tried to ask questions, what they were doing. Why were they doing it? How was it helping them? And then I could pin things out of that we could actually bring home and improve what I'm doing at home. And so it was a 2-way street. And I'm hoping that's what helped me build relationships.
When I brought stuff home, you didn't adopt those very readily, but that's okay.
No.
It's okay when you bring them home, but I bring home new ideas. Yeah, it's okay. Go back to Sacramento.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about what was your role as the CED, as a county executive director for FSA? What did you do? What was the primary purpose of your role?
Basically managed federal programs for the farmers and ranchers in those counties. Did a lot of disaster assistance from 2014 to when I retired. There was a lot of fires in Lake and Mendocino counties, Sonoma counties that we worked on. So that was a lot. Assistant drought was huge in Humboldt County We did a lot of wells, did a lot of water resources for livestock producers up there. Just trying to administer programs that come out of the Farm Bill that help, that assist the farmers and ranchers and mold them a little bit sometimes so that they fit the needs of the producers in our area.
So conservation programs that you help these farmers and ranchers with, a lot of times in cooperation with NRCS to get that conservation on the ground, I assume?
Some of it, yes. Some of it. I mean, when I started out, it was ASCS, so Agricultural Stabilization and Conservation Service. And then they changed our name in between there, and we eventually came up with Farm Service Agency. But when we started out as ASCS, we did the conservation programs. And at that time, it was Soil Conservation Service that changed then to
that
Natural.
Was NRCS, yeah.
Yeah, NRCS. But when I started working, the FSA office, or ASCS at the time, did all the conservation paperwork for the programs, did all the paperwork, and NRCS, or at that time SCS, would do the field work. And that's changed a little bit since then. We don't have as much FSA on some of those, like EQIP and some of their other programs doesn't have as much say, but we're still handling some of the paperwork.
You mentioned disasters, whether that's drought. You had feed programs for that. You had situations where we had hard winters and snow, where ranchers had to fly in hay up in Humboldt County. And you mentioned fire. And fires were all too common for quite a while, and still are, but there was a while there they were pretty bad every year. The fires in Lake County, Sonoma County, and of course Mendocino. The ranch we're on right now experienced a wildfire, and for a short period of time, for a year, it held the record for the largest wildfire in California history. Then the next year we lost that title, unfortunately, on both fronts. Having gone through a wildfire that was so destructive and did so much, on one hand, damage, but on the other hand, maybe some benefit. What was that experience like when you were dealing with other ranchers and farmers that were experiencing the same thing? How did that, in a weird way of saying it, but how did that experience help you in that part of your job?
I think my first wildfire was Middletown in 2014, and we were hauling hay into the producers. Two ladies that worked for me, Jolene and Carrie, and I would spend we were going to Middletown maybe 2-3 times a week, just trying to help anybody we could with hay, and seeing that on that side of it, like being on the working side of it, and going out and watching people have to bury their animals or take care of them or send them to a render or do what they had to do with their animals to get them out of there. That hit one side. That was really hard. It was really hard to hear the stories. You'd spend hours with producers talking about what they lost, whether it be their homes or their livestock, or maybe, in a lot of circumstances, both. And then when you hit the other side of it and you go through it yourself, you think that you already have an understanding of what it is, but you don't. It's a whole different kind of loss that you have when you lose your cattle or the animals you're taking care of. It doesn't have to be cattle. It could be your horses, your chickens. It doesn't matter what it is. They belong to you. You were supposed to take care of them, and you lost them in this fire. And there's, for people that grow up doing that, taking care of their animals, it's different. I don't know if you can explain it. I know that after the fires, I was on a program, and a gal asked me what does that do? And I said, well, it hurts my heart, and it still hurts my heart, the cows we lost, because that's not my job is to take care of them, not to lose them. So I think that by going through it, it added another layer that I didn't have before, because I hadn't actually experienced that loss. Not only just the loss of the land, what you lose on your land. We lost timber, we lost cows. God, we lost fences. It not only burned our land, but then it burned our Forest Service lease, and it burned another lease. It burned everything. So, and then to try to rebuild, it gave me a whole different understanding.
And that lets you relate with those folks that and share that experience with them.
It does. I think, though, it's one of the reasons I retired when I did, because after you go through so many fires, it wasn't just Middletown. Then we had other fires after that in Lake County, and then we had the Mendocino County fires and Sonoma County fires. And then we had our own fire, and then we had fires after that. And I think after a while, you just can't, it's just hard to do anymore. And so because now I saw it from a different side. So it just hurts more.
Tell us about the land management and the role grazing plays in that. Obviously, fire is going to strike, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to hit regardless of whether something is well managed or not. But what role do you feel grazing plays in helping mitigate the impacts of wildfire?
I think we saw it ourselves, and other people see it. The land that was grazed burned at a slower rate, even though, one of the roles that you try to do when you're managing a ranch is leaving forage behind for when you come back in the fall. So when our fire hit in 2018, we had left at least 6 inches of stubble across the ranch. And so fire traveled across it on those parts, not at a super fast speed, but maybe something that could have been controlled. It's hard. Hindsight's 2020, so I'm not sure. But it definitely plays a role. And I feel like there was an opportunity maybe that we could have done something, even though the 10 of us that were up here might have tried on the ranch and were unsuccessful. But I think grazing plays a huge role in helping not control wildfire, but slow wildfires down.
Dr. Lynn Hunsinger from UC Berkeley throws out a statistic that I think really illustrates that. And that's that grazing in California removes 12 billion pounds of dry matter a year. And that's a lot of forage, and that's a lot of fuel that's gone because of grazing that helps mitigate those wildfires. So you're absolutely right. We're going to have fires, and it's going to burn, especially when it's 100 plus degrees in July in California. But if there's less fuel, those fires are going to move slower.
Well, just think back when I was a kid, you'd go over to I-5, or you would travel, and there was sheep or cattle everywhere. And so those lands were all grazed, and we didn't have these large wildfires. So you think about it now, and she's right for right now. And then I wondered what it would look like if you went back. If you looked at how much land was grazed in the 70s, in the 80s, even in the 90s, what has changed? And so we removed a lot of livestock from the land. And when we did that, then everything grew up, and now we have all this, undergrowth and overgrowth, and everything's grown to a point where it makes it extremely difficult to slow down or stop a wildfire.
So kind of related to this issue. So Governor Brown appointed you to the State Board of Forestry in the grazing seat It's one seat on the board that is representing the rangeland and the grazing. But you have a unique position in that as a small timberland owner as well. So you can actually wear two hats on that board. Officially the grazing seat, but also bringing the viewpoint of non-industrial timberland. How has serving on that board, what's that been like for you? I know when you were first approached and you were kind of concerned, I don't know if I'm the right person.
Qualified. Is that the word you're looking for? But you can, because that was my concern.
Yes. Okay. So you didn't know if you were qualified, but I think you have clearly proven, since Governor Brown appointed you and Governor Newsom has appointed you twice, that that qualification is very clear now, that you clearly have.
Well, either that or nobody else wants the job.
I don't think that's it. I think that you have proven yourself as a board member who brings a very valuable perspective to that body. Tell us what the California State Board of Forestry does, for one, but then tell us how your experiences as a rancher and timberland owner, how those qualities of that experience you're bringing to the board, how's that been?
Well, when I did start out, I definitely felt underqualified for the position that I had there at the Board of Forestry. So the Board of Forestry has a lot of different hats. One of them is, the main hat is the rules that foresters and landowners have to follow in order to harvest timber off their land. And so that is one of its main focuses, and it's broadened out a lot since that was established. We have a lot of different issues, from Zone Zero, which is a whole discussion about how to protect homes from fires, to the livestock end, which is the Range Management Advisory Committee, RMAC, that oversees, and not necessarily oversees, but looks at grazing, all types of grazing, from goats, sheep, cattle, and how does that benefit the land, and how do we work with local, state, and federal agencies also to get more grazing on the ground to benefit. So the Board of Forestry is very broad. And I sit on two committees on the board. I sit on the Forest Practice Committee, which we really look at rules in the rule book and how those rules are written, and are they hindering or helping landowners. And sometimes it's simple tweaks. The rules were written in the 80s, and how do you take those rules and refine them or change language so that they're more understandable. And then there's some more pieces to that. But on that side of it, I really look at it as a small landowner, as our family is timber landowner. And are those rules going to hinder our ability to work on our land and protect our forest, but also to be able to harvest when it needs to be harvested? And so on conservation and sustainability, what can you do on your own land? And is it going to make it so that we're able to do that? And so that's a part of it. And the other part on the RMAC is to look at the range issues and livestock issues, and how do we also help agencies and private landowners graze their land and get more grazing on the ground.
How do you see rangelands playing a role in forest management?
I feel like we have both forest land and rangeland and livestock work through both of it. So they graze it all, which I think benefits the land. So And sometimes people get tunnel vision where it's either forest land or it's rangeland, and there's not a separation, or there is a separation, excuse me. There's definitely areas that are forested that livestock will not do well in, but there's also a lot of ground out there that you can graze that will benefit both the trees and the ground and the grass. And of course the livestock, because if I'm not going to have a good spot for livestock, why should I take it there?
That's also helpful in the wildfire mitigation. Absolutely.
I think it is. I'm also not so sure that everybody else in the world thinks it is, but I do. And I think that, at one time, CAL FIRE had a poster throughout. You'd see it on billboards in California. And if I remember, it had like 2 cows and 2 calves and maybe a bull on it. And underneath it said something like, thank your neighbors for reducing wildfire. And it was the cattle you were supposed to be thanking because they were reducing wildfire. They must have been doing something right, because I don't remember fires that were as harsh as the fires we have now back then. And you could call it climate. You could call it a lot of different things. But personally, I just call it, we're just not managing the land like we used to. And not that we used to do everything right. People have that correct. There were things we needed to improve on. But sometimes when we improve on things, we go so far one direction that we stop managing. And you can't just walk away from land and think that it's going to take care of itself. It's not. We have a role in that. We have had a role in that for a long time. And California walked away for a long time. And I believe now it's turned the corner, and now we're trying to manage and do a much better job than what we used to do.
You think your experiences and input have had a positive impact on the rest of the board?
Well, I don't think I've had a negative impact. Don't
sell yourself short here. Be honest.
Anyways, I would just say that I hope that what I bring to the board in the time that I've been there, and the time, I'm not sure how much longer I'll be there, but in the time I've been there and the rest, that I hope that I've influenced some decisions that have helped small landowners, that have helped small forest landowners, and are helping livestock producers. If I can leave the board and know that I've helped in those ways or on those issues, then my time's been served well.
Well, hopefully that's not anytime soon, because I see the passion that you put into it and the interest and the work that you devote to understanding the issues that come before that board and listening to the input. I honestly hope that the transition doesn't happen anytime soon. You mentioned RMAC as part of the Board of Forestry. What does RMAC stand for, and what is its role?
RMAC is the Rangeland Management Advisory Committee. It's actually a committee off the board that was put in place through legislation. And its purpose is to assist agencies and private landowners with rangeland issues. And board that includes CAL FIRE and natural resources and a whole, it could be the water boards about grazing issues. And within that, they also have the certified rangeland manager, which is a certification process for people to go through to work. They can work both forestry and rangeland issues and help do plans and such things.
How does the RMAC provide recommendations or input to the board? Is that through you as a liaison? Are you a voting member of RMAC, or are you a liaison to the RMAC between that and the Board of Forestry? Explain that a little bit.
I'm just a liaison between I'm an appointed member to RMAC, but I am not a voting member unless there's a tie. And so I am basically there to bring up issues that possibly the board has, to listen, provide input, and if the board of forestry has questions, to bring those back to the board. Generally, RMAC is set up with 11 members that come from both agencies to public members to members from Cattlemen's and Farm Bureau and different agencies out there that represent livestock producers and grazers. So my role on that is to listen and to bring back, and then they bring issues also to the board.
So do you think it's then a great tool RMAC is to get those producer voices to the board?
I would say it's one of the tools to do so. It it's with the increase of fires has also come from the governor an increase of legislation to push us to do more grazing. And so we have been working, or RMAC has been working on that issue and trying to get more grazing on public ground, trying to get more grazing in your parks, your state parks, and any of your local authorities that own land. And that's been, one of their pushes.
So more proactive stewardship of these lands.
Right. Trying to provide them the if they have questions, RMAC is not there to dictate by any means, but it is there to provide education for different agencies and private individuals on how to graze and why it's important to do so.
And you have academic representation on that as well.
Absolutely, yes.
So that helps give you that input to not only the Board of Forestry, but in other areas where it's important to try to emphasize why grazing is good on those public lands that you stated, the state lands that we've seen unfortunately locked up from grazing and without that management. And you mentioned this earlier, no management is no management. And it's the bad management, because those lands have to be managed in a way that helps prevent wildfires. It helps provide for better wildflowers, better water quality, all the things that come with the grazing, that if we lock out livestock from those lands and just go back to a rewilding viewpoint, it's not healthy for that land. And I think that I assume RMAC is one vehicle in which we can help drive that point home to the policymakers in Sacramento.
Absolutely. RMAC in the past years has done workshops trying to bring in agencies and agency staff to discuss the benefits of grazing. And I think that's part of a big part of their role is to bring in the staff and answer their questions, spend time with them. People are so far removed from the farm, so far removed from the ranch. They don't have that day-to-day interaction that you and I have. They're not out there on the ground doing that. And so it's so important for them to come in, if we can spend some time with them, explain what the benefits are, and try to show them, what's going on and why we're there and why we do what we do.
It's hard to beat that experience when you get out on the land and see it. I had a policymaker tell me a couple of weeks ago that we did a tour on a ranch in Colusa County, and he rode shotgun in my truck for a couple hours. And that was several years ago, number of years ago. And he told me in a conversation we just had that he learned so much from being out there on the ground and seeing firsthand the benefit of good management of these lands and how that is so important to not just wildlife species and the open space management and the clean air, the clean water, all those benefits we call ecosystem services in is the vernacular that's out there. But seeing it and not being someone from the industry, but being a major policy influencer and maker, that was pretty important to him.
Right. Well, it's not just it's not just him. When we had Cecilia come up from the Golden Gate Bridge, the manager of the Golden Gate Bridge District, and she comes up and she brands a calf. And she takes that picture back that we take of her branding a calf, and she puts it on her desk at the district.
At the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right, at the Golden Gate Bridge. And when people come in from the city and they to see her and they see this on her desk, it opens up a conversation. And I think that's a job not only that I should have because I'm a rancher, but RMAC is trying to do as well, is open that up. The people, even the academics have time on the ground. They've spent time out in the field with producers, if they're not producers themselves, and a lot of them are. And so they can provide that with agencies as well.
You mentioned Cecilia and the image of her in the branding pen doing something like that. And I remember that photo. It's pretty cool. And to hear her talk about it. You grew up in this business, in the industry, ranching, and have worked with your father and managed this operation and done it very well and successfully. But that, I imagine, has been a little bit of a challenge being a woman in this industry. How has that been from your perspective? And how have you used that to your success?
I think that as a woman in agriculture, I feel like, and even in cattlemen's, at least in my world, does not look at whether you're a male or a female or what color you are. I've never been treated poorly for being a female in the cattle industry. So my challenges have been more within my own, maybe within my own family, and meaning with my father, right? So proving myself, and maybe it wasn't necessarily my dad requiring that I prove myself. It's myself requiring that I prove, that I can do things. Sure, he could poke and prod, and but I think I felt like I had to prove myself more so than anybody else pushed me to prove myself.
It does make sense to me, and I've seen you be too hard on yourself for that. You've been too critical. And of course, I try to tell you otherwise, but that doesn't go over always so well because I said it. And it's just the natural reaction is to resist that. So
right. Well, you just need not to say anything.
I know. And I've learned to just keep my mouth shut. No, you haven't. Well, I try.
Yeah.
So this is the year of the woman farmer. So what does that mean to you personally and professionally?
I didn't even realize that existed until your staff told me that it did. So
they're really good at that.
They're very good at that.
They tell me stuff all the time I didn't know.
You didn't know? That's good. That's good because you need that.
I do.
So
I'm happy to admit that.
I'm glad because you don't do that at home. So I'm glad you do it somewhere.
I'm never wrong at home. I thought I was wrong once, but I was simply
God
mistaken.
Okay,
at that
no.
point.
So I just think that is this the first time is this the first time they've recognized women in agriculture? Because you got to think, my grandma was born in 1906. And if Mako was anybody to respect and look up to,
it was her. Tough.
Right. And she was definitely a woman in agriculture with her husband dying young and her raising 3 children and the ranch. And she built it. Without her, we wouldn't be where we are today. She's not my role model because that would be a little bit scary because she wasn't always nice, and I want to be nicer than she was, hopefully. But maybe she is a little bit of my role model because she was strong and honest.
There are a lot of similarities. Maybe not the mean part. Maybe not the mean part.
I hope not.
But she was a tough cookie. And
maybe she wasn't mean, but as a little girl, you have different ideas of what people are.
She raised you right, though.
She didn't raise me. My mom did, but she influenced me. How's that sound?
That's better. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
My mom raised me. But if there was someone in this world that should be recognized for a woman in agriculture, it isn't me, but it was my grandmother.
But those traits still filtered down. They did. You can't argue with me on everything.
I can, and I do.
Not successfully. I
do. You just are like your son and don't give up.
How have you you mentioned my son. Well, we have two of them. How has all this experience from your time with Mako, your grandmother, and your father, how have you parlayed that into raising our 3 kids?
Well, you were right. Yours, because I feel like most of the time I raised them, even though you were home more than I was.
Yeah. I was home more, but I think I had more to say on the raising side. But go ahead. Finish, I'm not.
But if you ask,
don't let me interrupt you.
Right. If they asked you, they might have a different opinion about what raising was.
That's not what they tell me, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's what they tell you. See, I think that my mom and my father and my grandmother had a lot to do with how we raised our children. I was probably too harsh on them and expected too much of them because, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but when you grow up in ranching, there's a lot that goes on. And so there's so much to do. And back to that, trying to, maybe that was the part where, you're a female and you're trying to be, and, meet expectations. And maybe nobody told me what the expectations were. I made them up. Right. And so I decided that these are my expectations I need to meet. And so my children need to meet those as well. And so I required our children to be, to do chores, to be on time, to be honest. And when they weren't honest, then they had to find a way to tell the truth, even after they told us not the truth. Right. So I think in raising our kids, I did or expected more from them because of my upbringing and and your upbringing as well. Because your father expected a lot out of you. So you and your mother, so I think we were both, even though we came from different backgrounds, we still had those expectations. So when we raised our kids, that was the same. But sometimes I feel like maybe because I wanted everything to always go right, and everything doesn't go right when you're working cattle, as we saw today, which, took forever to get the cows into the corral because we had a bunch of babies and new cows that decided that they didn't know the way to the corrals.
But it went fine.
It went fine. It ended up fine, right?
Yeah.
Right. But
wasn't stressful. Nobody was yelling at each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely not. I had to yell at somebody.
And I wasn't there for you to yell at.
I know. So Matthew got it. Yeah. So there, I think we could all look back on how we raise our children and be like, boy, I should have probably changed that. But on the other hand, we're pretty blessed.
I think so. I would agree with that. So you have raised more than just our 3 kids. We have helped mentor and raise some other children as well. What advice do you have for other young women, just women wanting to get into agriculture, into ranching? What advice would you give them?
Well, there's 2 folds to that, right? we have raised other children or brought in. I wouldn't say we've raised them, but we opened our doors. And I hope that that's something that we can continue to do, is to open our doors. And I feel like that came from my mom and dad opening their doors. And so I hope that's something we can continue to do, because if you can do anything to help a young person along their path, that's important. And so that's a part of it. The second part, how do young people get involved in, or young women get involved in ag or livestock or different things? You just have to have the right mentors, the right people as well. And there's just opportunities galore out there. And I think there's opportunities with ranchers as well, to help, to start building what you want, to start learning before you start building. I remember our daughter, Kayla, wanting to buy cows, and she came home and she was like, I want to buy cows. I want to do this. And at first I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, that's wonderful. On the other half, I'm like, how are we going to, do more? But the last thing I wanted to do was be a person that said, no, we can do it, but you just, you shouldn't, right? And so she bought her first set of cows, and they came from Oregon, and she got a lease, and she started working on it. And, it's been a slow process for her and her husband. And, now they've done well, and they're growing and doing what they need to do. And
she did it on her own.
She did it on her own. Well, she did it on her own, but you and I helped her, right?
Well,
to some degree.
Very little, frankly.
And I don't mean financially, and I don't mean, but we sat there and said, you can do this.
Right.
You can make this work. And if you have something that you're worried about, bring it to us, and we will try to help you through it.
Right.
And so I think that's what, young women need to look for, is someone that's a mentor that can help them with those things, that can reassure them and help them find their path.
And it's worked out well for her. And she found a lease, and it was not so much a financial lease, but it was a lease of labor.
Right.
Fix fences, do some improvements on there. So she wasn't putting out cash, but was able to get that started and pay off the loan with the calves that she had from that small little herd. And you hit on it when you said mentor, and that's the key, is finding someone to help provide that advice, help them along, and get them started. I think that's the critical part, because it is a tough business to get into. If you're not starting with, if you're not coming into it, if it's not handed to you. So what's the future look like to you? What's looking ahead? What are some of the challenges and the opportunities that you see from the ranching standpoint in California?
Prices are great if you're in the business. If you're getting in the business, prices are scary. You look to go buy cows, and you're sitting there thinking, how can I afford these? And it's not necessarily just how can you afford them, but am I going to be able to pay them off? Where are we going? But that's agriculture. We had a neighbor not a few years ago who sold calves on a really good year, did really well. He was all excited. And 2 years later, he lost everything. And he was like, Katie, I don't understand what happened. I'm like, well, that's what happens in agriculture. Sometimes it feels like a roll of dice. So I think that you just have to have steady partnerships and good mentors and have a good game plan. And then when, that might all go awash too, right? But the most rewarding part about it is that you're on the land, you're seeing improvements, you're watching your calves grow, everything that you're doing, all the outcomes that you do every day, like you start your day and you're feeding and you're going through it. It always feels good at the end of the day, what you've accomplished. And you have to weigh it. Where does that fit with you when you go into the business, because money is important. You've got to make money and you've got to pay your bills, and and if you're doing it to make a living off of it, then you have to figure that out so you can make a living off of it. But there's also another side to it that it has to fulfill you, and cattle fulfill me. I love it. I love riding my horse. I love my dogs. I love the cows. I love the calves. It always hurts to see one that's, struggling, or one we have to doctor more, or one that just didn't make it. All those things. Sometimes I feel like it's because I'm getting older. It's a little harder for me, but it fulfills me. And so you have, in the whole grand scheme of things, that's important.
What gives you hope about rangelands and these working lands and being able to sustain an operation like ours, a family one, or just sustain the industry altogether in California?
Everybody that's downstairs, right? My kids, my sister's kids, and my brother's kids. They're the ones, at least in our operation, that give me hope. So our children, because that's who it is. I mean, we're only here for so long, you and I. And so it's the next generation. And when I look at them and the grandchildren that are downstairs right now, they're the ones that give me hope. That get on a horse and ride with me today. When we get back up here, our granddaughter who wants to get on the horse and ride.
I think she put her helmet on several times today and just said, "Come on, Papa."
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. And don't let her go without a helmet, because then that's just a bad habit. But she, right. Those are the ones that give me hope. And I know when you look out and you go to things, that everybody else's grandchildren are the same. They're the ones that give them hope. I think that's universal because that's who we are. And that's the generations.
Well, I think that sums it up pretty well when you look at not just our kids and grandkid. I was going to say grandkids, but it's grandkid at the moment. And
there'll be more.
I hope so.
I do too.
But it's that next generation, looking at it from a little higher viewpoint. It's what gives you hope, as you just stated, but it also gives me hope is when I look out and see that next generation, and we see it in our daughter's FFA kids, and the leadership, the enthusiasm, the professionalism that they show as representatives of that next generation of agriculture in California, and not just California, but nationwide in the country, gives me that hope that there is a strong future. We've got some challenges, particularly in California. We have challenges, whether those are our market, regulatory, policy, but providing that opportunity for our youth or the next generation to take over operations, to acquire, to start, somehow get into production of food and fiber in this state, in this country, it's an honorable profession. And, I looked at it when I was trying to decide what to do when I was in high school, and always been involved in agriculture, and thought, what do I want to get my education and degree in? And I said, to me, it was a no-brainer. It was agriculture. And someone once asked me why. I said, because we're always going to have to eat.
Isn't that funny? Because when I was in high school, it was completely the opposite. I wanted to be as far away from ag. Not necessarily as far away from ag, but like there was such a push that maybe the jobs weren't there in the 80s. Maybe that isn't what you wanted to do. But then it turned around that's where I needed to be.
That's where your heart lied.
Right. So it wasn't, even though, the influence, and I don't know if it was, I can't say it was from my family. But there was an influence there that told me that I needed to be doing something else to have a career. And it wasn't ag. And then I turned that around differently and went back to ag anyways.
And I assume there's no regrets.
Absolutely not.
It's a tough life, but it's been extremely rewarding for us. I think it's safe to say. You haven't interrupted me and told me otherwise. So I'm going to say that's a good conclusion. But it's really something that I know we're both very proud to be a part of. And the community, the industry, the folks that are working very hard day in and day out to produce not just the food and the fiber and the energy and the open space, the wildlife habitat, all those, and we call ecosystem services, but all that stuff that matters to people. That is so valuable.
Well, isn't that what keeps us going day to day? It's not necessarily, I know you're saying
it's not the money.
It's not the money. That's for sure. I would have retired long before 2 years ago, right?
Yeah. And I'm still having to work.
You have to work for a while. So sorry.
So someone retired a little too early, but anyway,
no, absolutely not.
It's definitely, it's what keeps us going, like you said.
And those kids that are in FFA that our daughter teaches every day, those give you inspiration too, because they're doing a wonderful job, and they don't all come from an ag background either, but they love it.
They do. Well, Katie, thank you for being part of this today and tonight. And we appreciate that. And we hope that everything continues on and that you continue to be the excellent representative you are to the Board of Forestry, but you're taking all that experience and parlaying that into some excellent leadership on behalf of your community and your industry. Somewhere in all of that, you find time to operate a ranch and still, even though they're adults, help raise 3 kids and a grandkid. So,
are they adults though? That's the question.
I think technically.
Okay.
So I think we're
just
good
checking.
There.
Okay.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, that closes the gate on the first episode of Season 5 of Tune Into the Land. As we continue into this season, I want to remind you that your feedback matters to us. So please share your thoughts by leaving a comment or a review. Let us know what you enjoyed, what topics you'd like us to dig into, and your suggestions for future guests. Don't forget to hit that follow button to ensure you're notified when the next episodes drop. And if you'd like to support our mission, visit our website at rangelandtrust.org. There you can make a donation or check out the Get Involved tab to learn more about upcoming events and conservation projects. Thank you for listening, and until next time.